As a rule of thumb, you've got to keep in mind what law firms are thinking of in terms of their interns. They have nothing to gain, they have nothing to lose. Most law firms don't pay a stipend.
But the best way to do it is to find curated organizations on LinkedIn, make a list of them, and write to the relevant person. Interns who always applied 1 year ahead of time would always get the internship. Unless
Today, the opportunity that students have to leverage these platforms because content is so democratized is something that people should not miss out on.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of our internship series. We have an exciting episode on how to get internships waiting for you today. But before we get to that, let's do a quick recap from our last podcast on internships. So, very quickly, in our last video, we spoke about how to strategize your internships at law school to get your first job post graduation in a field or an area that actually interests you. So, the key piece to this puzzle is to use your first couple of internships to explore areas of interest. Once you find your area of interest, you funnel down, work in smaller organizations in that particular field, gain valuable experience, create content on the internet, and use the experience plus the content that you've written to project yourself as someone with knowledge in that field, and then leverage uh, those assignments and those internships to get an internship at a slightly bigger organization. And then in the final year, you walk into an organization where you see yourself working post graduation, and that you should consider as your audition internship. Now, for your audition internship, you would be well prepped because you've done all the preparation leading to this audition internship, which is working in smaller organizations, getting real hands-on experience, speaking with people who are relevant for that particular industry, and you'd have gained a lot of insight from those discussions. And researching and writing content on the internet, you would have also gained some valuable knowledge. So you are going to leverage all of this to naturally do well at this audition internship, and it's likely that you will get a job, or at least you'll land an interview at this final year internship place. As far as 3 year students go, they don't have the luxury of time, unfortunately. It's a 6 semester program. So the best way for them is when they come into law school, they should already know what their areas of interest are, and they should start looking for organizations which cater to their interest. They go there, they perform, they develop more interest, do the same thing which we've advised the 5 year students to do, that is, write more content, get published on the internet at least, and then convert your final audition internship into a full-time job. So how do I do for a recap, Shivani?
I think that is a very nice way to summarize a 30-minute episode into 2 minutes, and that sets the ground for what we want to discuss today. So, today's discussion is all about now you have your internship strategy in place, you've thought through what you need to be doing over your 5 years at law school. Now, how do you actually convert that? How do you get internships? How do you apply for them? What are law firms? And in this episode, when we say law firms, it's a generic term. We mean law firms, organizations, solo practitioners, right? What are they looking for when they're reviewing internship applications, and how do you make an impression? Because it's reasonably understandable that you have the entire country interning around the same time. So you need to also have a strategy in place on how to best apply to these places so that you can get your strategy in motion.
Well, there are two ways to apply for internships. One is the same old way of going to these job boards, looking for internships postings and applying there. But the problem with this approach is that you won't be able to find organizations of your interest. You have to apply to what's out there. So maybe that's not the best way to do it. You can do it. If you find something that you like or something that you are interested in, go ahead and apply. But the best way to do it is to find curated organizations on LinkedIn, make a list of them, and write to the relevant person there. Send in a CV plus also a covering letter or a SOP where you're expressing your interest as to why you want to get there.
Right. And also if you're working with an internship strategy that we've advocated for in the previous episode, you can't be going to job boards and applying for whatever is vacant, right? You might not get it in the area of interest that you're looking to explore. It might not be the right organization where you're getting the exposure that you need. So now the other way of doing it, scouring LinkedIn and identifying organization, this is a time consuming process. You need to start way before you need to apply. So just general rule of thumb is that you apply for internship 6 months before you actually have to intern, which means that you need at least another 3 months before that to research where to apply.
Exactly. And, I'll add an other point over here. If you're from a tier two or a tier three school, make that 9 months,
Right.
just to give yourself as much time as you need, because you don't have a network and these things initially might get a little difficult. The upside to this is the more earlier you apply to any internship, they will always look at your application favorably. One, because you have taken the initiative of planning and applying for a year in advance, and very few people do that. It seems like very simple advice and such an
Obvious
easy,
one, yeah.
yeah, and easy for everyone to do, but you'd be surprised how many people execute this. And I also want to add a small tidbit from the firm I worked at. Uh, Interns who always applied 1 year ahead of time would always get the internship, unless there was an. In fact, there's never been a case where we've rejected someone if they've applied a year in advance. That's always been the case. I think the only time they may reject is when there's an obvious red flag of some sort. I think this is very useful information. But let's also look into how to leverage the CV and the
Cover.
covering letter to get these internships.
When you're preparing your CV and your cover letter, as a rule of thumb, you've got to keep in mind what law firms are thinking of in terms of their interns. They have nothing to gain, they have nothing to lose. Most law firms don't pay a stipend. So when you're preparing your CV, you need to, especially in your first year and second year, you don't have much to show in terms of your qualifications. So you need to make an impression that you are a studious person. Maybe if your academic grades are good, you need to highlight that. And your cover letter, especially, is what would be key for a first year and a second year student, has to highlight why you're interested. Because you're applying to a place where they're not actively looking to recruit interns, that's not their prime responsibility, right? So you've got to stand out and show to them that you really care about working over there and why it matters to you. And that will go a long way in someone going out of their way and giving you an internship, especially if they are not actively looking for interns.
So I think this why is a very interesting point. You need to make the why is the best way in a covering letter to make a case to give you an internship. Essentially, you are showing them almost a human level connect on why you're motivated to be there. So how do you research this why? Firstly, how do you research what that particular firm is an expert in, or what do they do on a regular basis, and then how do you connect your why with that with the main object or the core objects of the organization firm?
Yeah, so for you to answer a why when you're applying to an organization, the first step is you should have done a very thorough research about that organization, right? Check out their website, know who the partners are, know who the principal associates are, the senior associates, see what they publish on LinkedIn, see what articles are being put out by that firm that you're applying to. This will give you an understanding of what they're doing in terms of the work that's going on over there. And once you, because you're applying there because you've identified an area of interest, that will help you funnel down. So if there is an article that's published on the website of the firm that you're applying to, you need to dig deeper. You need to know what positions that they are taking. You need to do that research yourself. So when you're then writing your cover letter and you know who you're writing to, you're almost addressing it on a personal level. Most likely the people that are looking at internship CVs are the senior associates, right? So you're writing to them saying that, you've read about their organization, you've read about their work, this is what interests you, and why does it interest you? So when it comes to the question, the next part of your question on how do you identify the why, this is especially for the first years and second years, because you don't have prior experience to go on. Your why should be that one, this is an area that interests you, and two, you want to explore that if this is what you want to do in life as a lawyer.
Yes, you come off as authentic.
Right.
And I would, as a suggestion, I would say use a lot of the preface work that you have done to generate that interest. What I mean to say is, prior to coming to the conclusion that you may be interested in a field, you would have read certain newspaper articles, you would have read some amount of content somewhere, and you would have come to the conclusion that there is probably an interest in this field. So, talk about that.
Yeah, so what I see the common error that people make, especially when I am reviewing applications for internship, is their why or their reason for wanting to apply is very generic. They are just saying things like, I want to work at your prestigious organization. I want to work at a law office that does this kind of work. But for example, let me take an example. Like when I was at Indus, so PVC work, right? That 10 other firms do in Bangalore at a similar scale. So what does that mean? Like you've just sent a generic cover letter and application to everyone. So that's the next part of the advice, right? When you're applying to multiple places because you've identified an area of interest, you've still got to customize your cover letter so that you're addressing it to that organization and it makes sense why you're applying to that organization in particular. And it does not look like a cover letter that you've sent to 20 other people.
Yes, and see, I do recognize that within a particular industry, there might be five or six similar organizations that all look the
Same.
same, right? So, how do you really make a distinction? I think the best way you need, and that's where detailing matters, right? Even within these big firms, small details will be different. Some of these big firms may have a one-off practice area that the others don't have. For example, I remember there was a time when one of the Amarchand Mangaldas firms, either CAM or SAM, had a policy team. So that is a good distinction to know. You can make the point that, well, I know that you can make the point that based on your research, you found that only they had a policy team and you were interested in working on policy. And the fact that those kind of matters are being done, and then the connection to policy means a better exposure. And all of this would obviously work, assuming that amateur internship was one of your final internships and you've done a lot of other policy internships before going on there.
So even if you don't have, if you're not applying for a practice area which is this specialized and only few people have a policy team in the firm, let's take an example of something more common. Like if you're applying for a general corporate practice, you have most firms doing the same kind of work. It's only probably tier one firms that are doing work that's once in a career opportunity, like let's say the Flipkart Walmart deal, right? So that is something very different. But other than that, most of them are doing similar type of work. So how do you then make that connection to say that you're directing your cover letter to that specific firm? So that is where you have to leverage the content that you've read that the firm has put out, right? So if you've seen that they've worked on a deal, let's for example say that you've seen that the firm that you're applying to has worked on a fundraise for Zepto, and this is a brand that's well known. These are founders that are well known. They're public figures almost. So you can draw from that. Now you can say things like you want to work with businesses that are innovative. You want to work with founders that are young and inspiring. And this is where your interest lies in the practice area that you've identified.
Yeah, so essentially you are showing the reader that you have done put in the research to understand that there is a trend in the nature and type of clients that are coming to that firm. And that is a very cool thing to show in a covering letter. Anybody serious reading that covering letter will almost definitely call you for an internship. The conundrum with developing the best cover letters, in my view, is the problem of time, right? To create authenticity, you have to build that. Who do you think can write those kind of cover letters where they're going into great detail to make that distinction between a KCO and a trilegal? Only people who've identified a practice area, their interest, they've been in other organizations, smaller, they've worked their way up the chain, and they've done a lot of deep research into the content, and they can make those kind of calls and distinctions, and then they can come off authentically in their covering letter, and it shows.
Basically, those who have implemented the internship strategy that we've advocated in over these two episodes.
Yes, I think this is the best. I mean, not to kind of sound like I'm blowing my trumpet, but even if you think about it logically, this is a very foolproof way to ensure that you get a job of your choice and in a practice area that you are vested in and that you care about. And if you don't do these, one of two can happen, right? One, you can, of course, I must concede, you might just find your area of interest and it might all work out fantastically. And it has for a lot of people, but that is more like a luck. It's a chance game.
Yeah, you're increasing your possibility of walking out successful from law school. And these are strategies to do that. That's not to say that others don't succeed at all, but you can look at the numbers for yourself.
Yeah, I agree.
And this makes a lot of sense for people who are in the fourth and the fifth years. They can, because they're looking at much bigger organizations, they're looking at tier one firms, and there's a lot of data to go out there on the internet about what these firms stand for. They have an active publication practice, I mean, active publication exercise that they take on a monthly basis. But now, what about in if you go back to our internship strategy for the first year, second years, and third years? We've advocated that they start off working at smaller organization. So now, how do they? What is the difference in doing research for these boutique firms and smaller organizations? How do they then build that connection?
See, it's easy to identify differences in smaller organizations, right? You would see that it's essentially a 5 to 7 member team, and the founding partners have generally come from tier one law firm to set up the organization. Or, for example, a startup, right? A startup, they're more interested in product. The legal head is probably or likely a young senior associate from a tier one or sometimes even a tier two firm, right? So writing to them is a lot more easier. And in those cases, in the startup case, you kind of show that connect for your interest in that business area. And the why comes a part of the answer would come out well, assuming that you've done other internships in a similar field and also you've again produced some content, barring the first two internships where you have that freedom and luxury to say that, hey, listen, I haven't really worked in this area, but I've read about this field and that this is a field that I seem to have some interest in. Can you give me an internship to explore this practice area? Every other internship, you need to show some amount of proofing that you why you think you have an interest. And only when you have that proofing does the why become a lot more authentic.
Yeah, so your first years and second years for just for reference purposes, what we can do is include a link to a sample CV and a cover letter. You can find that in the description. So that's where you can start off with. But when it comes to the third, fourth, fifth years, that means that you're at that stage where you've funneled down your area of interest and you have some experience that you need to build on, right? So apart from this direct strategy of finding organizations on LinkedIn or on job portals, for third years, fourth years, fifth years, you've got to leverage the connections that you've made while interning in your first year and second year. You've got to reach out to the people that you worked with, you made an impression with, and ask them for a reference. If you've done a good job, I can see no reason why someone would refuse. Like ultimately, the law firm community, especially if you're going to intern in the same area that you've previously worked in, the law firm community is quite well knit. They will know 10 other people who are in the kind of organizations that you're trying to go for. So you've got to leverage these connections.
Yeah, and you should understand that a lot of people don't use these tactics. And when you do use these tactics, people are impressed. They're
Yeah.
generally quite impressed that you've put in a lot of thought. And I think we can vouch for the fact that any organization would love to hire somebody who has put in a lot of thought, a lot of preparation into something as basic as internships. That's just like, I mean, if I could see a pattern and if I could talk to someone and they told me their whole internship strategy for 5 years and how it's been largely in one field and they're now auditioning for this big job, what do you think is going to happen? You are going to get that job.
Yeah, provided you've got the technical skills right, you will stand out. Like if there can be you and probably two more candidates that have are on the same level with their technical skills. But if you can show that you actually care about this area of practice and you've put in a lot of work and thought and you built your profile over the years to audition for that job, then you will clearly stand out.
So, just to give our audience a 3,000 feet bird's eye view or perspective on jobs at companies, firms, um, I would say that there is competition and then there is no competition, right? So, but what I mean by there is competition in the sense that profiles are largely similar, at least the ones that are likely to make it, the profiles are largely similar, and it's very difficult to distinguish between candidates. So then what happens is, from a firm perspective, to be on the safer side, they're going to look at the people that they've already hired, and if they see that they've recruited somebody consistently from the same school, then the person who has gone to that school will get that chance, because the profile is largely similar to most of the other competitive candidates. And that's why you always hear this thing that there is this bias towards NLS. It's not a bias, it's just firms
It's a
playing
safe
safe.
bet. Yeah.
It's a safe bet. Now, if and to prove my point, if you look at Bombay firms will largely recruit not from NLS, but from the local colleges in Bombay, because that approach has always worked for them in the past, and it's a proven approach, because they're interning for 5 years consistently on a daily basis every day after college. So they're likely to get the job. So when you're from a new law school that doesn't have an established network, all the more reason why you have to plan this way so that you stand out.
Your
You
application stands out because you can't rely on your alumni network or your alma mater.
you don't have an alumni network.
Yeah.
So the only way to do win this is to kind of stand out completely from everyone else, where they're forced to give you an chance. And then why I say it's not competitive again is, if you look again on the larger spectrum broadly, there are very few candidates. The pool of candidates who are even competent enough for some of these hallowed jobs within the law firm and within in-house levels are very few. I won't even say it's 10 people for one job. I would say that the competition is somewhere like 1:6 and 1:7. And in my view, in India, anything that's 1:6 or 1:7, you should give yourself a good shot to win that bet or war.
Right. Moving on, another aspect which can improve your success when you're applying to firms, especially in your third, fourth, and fifth year, is you funnel down your area of interest. You've worked at a couple of internships in this area of interest. Now, how do you step up? You've worked at boutique firms. Now you need to graduate to a bigger organization. So, apart from just making that application and proving in your cover letter that this is an area of interest that you've invested in, you should differentiate yourself by again leveraging content to your advantage. In that, you need to do better research, deeper research, identify the problem areas that your previous internships were trying to solve, do research yourself, go into depth, and start posting either on LinkedIn or open a Substack newsletter. And what that does is, when you network with, say, partners or senior associates for that next internship that you're going for, apart from your cover letter, anyone can say anything on their cover letter. That's like a one day's job, right? If you put in the time, you can write a brilliant cover letter in one day. But if they check out your LinkedIn profile or if they have something more to go on, then you're sealing the deal.
Yeah, I think that's also a useful way for people to get internships in their senior years. Ultimately, even if you answer the why, you also have to back that why with that content, right? With there has to be something.
Exactly.
And word of advice on this: you don't have to always be publishing in IBLJ or any other recognized journal. You can write on Substack, you can post on LinkedIn, you can post anywhere these days, and you can get a chance. And even if you want to publish in IBLJ or any other law journal, the standard is not really that high. Uh, I mean, I have looked at some of these articles over there. They're not so research is very different to how we think about we say research and how scholars say what research means. So what real research is, you look at data and then you draw some kind of hypothesis. But if you look at these articles, they're largely opinion pieces on cases and outcomes. And if you read the internet and then you read the article, you would see that it's a reiterated position spelt differently. That's it. And if you, I think if you write a very good article and with cases and a good viewpoint and well footnoted, it's likely that your article will be published in any of these journals.
Yeah, and the it's things have evolved, right? Because for instance, when I was in law school, publishing was one of the places where we could show that we've done the research. Because LinkedIn was not that popular, no one wrote articles on LinkedIn, and there was no other platform. But now that's no longer the case. You don't have to wait for a publication to call for papers in a particular area of law which you're, looking for, and then apply and wait for that to happen. If you're doing research on a day-to-day basis because you funnel down your area of interest, that's something that even if it's not a 2000, 3000 word article which would be relevant for a journal, you can still post a much more smaller piece on LinkedIn, on Substack. And what this essentially, you're not doing this because you're getting a certification that you've been published in that article. You're doing this to show that you've built a portfolio in this area of interest and you've done some serious work on it.
Yeah, and you can show it on your CV also. You can give the
Yeah.
handle for your Substack page. Largely, CVs today are again online, right? You have a soft copy of your CV. You can have a link to your Substack page or wherever you generally tend to post content. And it is an opportunity for potential recruiters or intern providers to have a look at your content.
Yeah, and even when you're interacting and networking with people on LinkedIn, so there is an annoying way to do it where you're just sending them direct messages saying that, hi, give me an internship and this is who I am, this is my CV. Not a lot of people download your CV and read it, right? There's a better way to engage with people that you want to interact with in your area of interest. So especially if you're, following people that are active on LinkedIn themselves, whenever they post, because now you have identified your area of interest, whenever they post, find ways to meaningfully engage with those posts, leave a comment with an insight, say something that is related to the article that they're talking about. So when you've done this, even if it's not the internship season, all of this you need to do way before. When it's internship season finally and they see a DM from you in their inbox, you're in their radar, they know who you are, they've probably seen your profile, and that is a much better way to connect with someone rather than just sending very generic message to 20 people in that field.
Yeah, exactly. And your first message should never be the ask. Your first message to somebody whom you're trying to network on LinkedIn shouldn't be, hey, can I get that internship? Okay. And because their obvious response is why. And you don't have an answer. You haven't really answered. You just asked them, you've given them your CV and you're asking them to give you an internship. You need to kind of start with saying, hey, could I noticed that you are a practitioner in so and so field. I also write content on this matter. Would be great if you could have a look at my work and uh, give me some feedback. And if they're very genuine themselves, they'd always be, because they very seldom get such messages, they'd be intrigued to click on the link and see what you've written. And in probably like, I would say 6 to 7 out of 10 cases, you would get a response, and then you use that to start a meaningful conversation, not more like, okay, now that I've sent you a link, can you give me an internship? That's not how it should follow. You should use that as a pivot to have a conversation, and you will note that the conversation invariably, in certain cases, it will lead to that person themselves asking you, hey, what is your internship position? And then that's an indication that they are keen on probably offering an internship to you.
Right. So have you had any experience, because I've had, where you've connected with someone who's reached out to you like this on a social media platform, and it just stands out from the generic messages that you get for an internship or a job?
So I've had people reach out to me on my content directly. So I've had messages from, and it hasn't led to a job, but it did lead to an interesting conversation and a networking thing, right? And then it also it's created a situation where if I want to explore an opportunity in so and so organization, I can always write to them. I It's created that level of comfort. But they reached out to me because of the content that I posted on my LinkedIn. But when I was in college, all of this happened now very recently, me in employment. But when I was in college, I never followed any of this pathway
It
to.
wasn't available when you and I were in
But
college.
yeah, so at least for me, I was a lot more privileged than most people, and I was in one of the earlier batches of JGLS, and the university took an active role in helping us with internships. So I pretty much interned in the places that I wanted to intern in, and also my grades weren't too bad from law school, and that did help me get the internships that I wanted.
Definitely, when you and I were in law school, this wouldn't have worked because people social media was not this prevalent, especially in the professional space.
It was evolving.
Yeah, when I was in college, I think people were still on Facebook, so this is ancient, and LinkedIn was not really a
Yeah,
thing.
not many people knew what LinkedIn was. Like few people knew what LinkedIn was.
And it was just to, no one was writing articles, writing content. It was just to stay connected with the people. So I remember that whenever I used to intern somewhere, I would check out people's profiles on LinkedIn and add them. And that was about it. Neither were they posting anything, or I don't even think LinkedIn article was a feature back then.
Yes. And we didn't have Substack either back then.
That's right. Today, the opportunity that students have to leverage these platforms because content is so democratized is something that people should not miss out on.
See, the beauty of this process of exploring unavailable internship opportunities, writing to them, and showing real, genuine, authentic interest is that it can equip you for foreign internships too, especially from law schools that are not well known on the foreign circuit, they're new in India. I think your best shot of getting a foreign internship is by showcasing real interest with your content profile on the internet.
So some of these tier one law schools have this formal internship exchange program where the students over there have the opportunity to actually go travel and intern at these international law firms. But for the others, what I have seen from some research that we did is that there are these law firms, international law firms, that now have a remote internship program where they accept internship applications from students from all countries. So your chance of success at applying to these internships and getting those positions is greatly increased if you've done this profile building that we've been talking about. You've shown genuine interest in the area of practice that you've identified. It can be by actually having like a decent sized newsletter or writing on LinkedIn. And that application will be a little more meaningful, right? Like imagine if you're applying to a trade practice in an international law firm and you've not done any research on international trade conventions or anything. But now compare that to an intern who's probably done some moots in that field or has publications in that field. You can stand out that way.
Yeah, I would still caution that it's a long shot, but it's worth a shot. And for our audience, we have a link to a Word document or any document in any format that gives out our research for these virtual internships at international law firms. Do check it out.
Yeah. I think this pretty much sums up what we wanted to discuss. Do you have anything to add, Mitra?
Nothing, but to very quickly summarize for our audience, the strategy is don't look for internships on job boards. But if you find, I mean, while I say don't look, at the same time, if something that is of your interest peeps up, no harm in applying.
But that's not the best
That's
strategy.
not the best strategy. The best strategy is always to make a list of organizations where you think you are going to be a good fit, depending on which year of law school you are, and start writing to them, send them your CV with a cover letter. Your CV is not going to be that different. It's just going to have your law school name, your grades, and then if you have publications, great, then it would have some merit. If you have moods, great, it would have some merit. The covering letter is where the real thing comes in. That's where you can leverage and and convince them why they should be giving you an internship, provided you're able to write an authentic why. An authentic why is nothing but your expression of why you are genuinely interested in that practice area. And you will only be able to write an authentic why if you have done some internships in the same field in the past, have published enough content in the past. That's when you can generate an authentic why. So, and finally, if you're in your first years or second year and you're creating your CV and covering letter, it's okay if you don't have the social proof and the content for your covering letter. It's okay if you tell organizations or that you have an interest in this practice area based on what you've read and you would like to explore it further. The key piece is that you need to come off as authentic in your cover letter. There's no substitution for authenticity. The more authentic you are, the more likely that you'll get placed in as an intern in some of these organizations. And then if you've done all this well in the final year when you're auditioning for your main job and you try to get an internship in the organization where you think you want to work, it's likely to work out because you will have enough knowledge to speak in depth of what that organization does, portray a genuine interest, and they would definitely be curious enough to give you a chance.
Great. So, to our audience listening into this, if you have any questions, do leave a comment. And actually haven't had much of feedback from our listeners, and it would really help to know what you're thinking and if you have any additional topics that you would like us to cover. So, do leave a comment, check out the links in the description, and like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you.